Good morning. I'm going to have to, just so everyone knows, I am fighting quite the flu and cold, but I needed to just, I need to keep going. So, but I thought I'd do a fairly low effort stream today. Just, it'll be a quick one. Never. But no, I've got a lot of assignments and stuff to do, and also being sick. So you'll hear it in my voice, and I may like cough and splutter like randomly, but I'll do what I can do. But this is just something that I've been, like you might see a little pivot coming from me, and then in
Bluetooth mode.
Every time I turn the TV off, the speaker goes Bluetooth mode, and then I forget that it does that. And then it talks, and then I go, but then I remember that you probably can't hear it, and I look crazy, so it's good. It's a good system. This is obviously just a temporary setup. The lighting's not great, but, you can see the cars going by, because it's a wet day today. Because we've got solar power now, of course, it has been cloudy and wet all for the last ever since we got it. So of course, that's just how it goes. So my bad, I caused this. This was my bad. Like that time I hung out the quilt in Sydney in 2014. Sorry, that was my bad. And I caused that 5-day massive storm and floods. I apologize for hanging out that quilt. We got solar. That's why it's been bad weather. Anyway, so bear with my voice. I apologize. And if I do cough and splutter, I will try to mute. Okay. But it is something that I've been thinking quite a lot about lately, especially I think the energy in the room. And, it's something that I've always gone through, right? Always. I've been going through this ever since the internet was a baby, okay? And I've grown up with this weird persona thing of, where snark was cool. And this is a part of it is just growing up. and growing out of certain things and maturing. But, like the internet in particular, especially I think when your income or brand or anything like that is sort of hitched to a certain persona, it can be difficult to unpack, what's... I think that this is something that, again, I touch on some of the theoretical. Obviously, I have to explain that some of this obviously is rhetorical, and I know why, and I explore why. And if you become a patron, I can afford to write a book and, all the things that I want to do. Unfortunately, I just never get time. I'm hoping to write something today, but because I'm feeling like crap and I'm a bit behind on things, I may not get to it. But, I bite off what I can every day. In an ideal world, I'd be able to write and do videos and edit clips and do all the stuff. But I just, it's just not, it's not a feasible thing for, in the current system where someone like me I'm stretched too thin. But I do the best I can to try and get thoughts out there as much as I can. But, there is obviously research around this. And there are answers. And I think that it does link to the topic of the video, which is this something that I've observed, I think, in the content space, is this idea. It's just sort of like this weird race to the bottom, the content problem in general, okay, which is to sort of relitigate ideas, try to sort of drive up controversy and clicks. Yes, please. These are our relaxed desk streams. You can just walk in and go, do you want a coffee? And I'll go, yeah, okay. Hey, Paul, hello. I shouldn't do this on stream. Finish my coffee. You should just get me another cup. Here you go. And then I get the gurgles now. That's great. Anyway, hello. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, I'm on the internet. So, there is research around this stuff, but one of the problems, I think one of the paradoxes of content, right, that I've sort of identified one the other day, which is that those who are most qualified to fight and deal with misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, are sort of gagged by not NDAs or professional boards, or, it's too risky, or they risk cancellation. So that's one sort of problem that we need to fix, okay, which is creating an environment where people can sort of speak more. But the other paradox is this conflict between what again, I'm not saying anything that's particularly new or profound, okay? I'm not pretending that like this, but, the paradox, yet another one of these problems is that this never-ending spiral of sort of controversy and conflict and drama and rage that actually does have like a political outcome. And what it does is it actually, it distracts people from like actual participation and what they can actually do. And a big problem, like I think I've said a couple of times now, that I'm fucking sick of podcasts, like these podcast people. I'm sick of it. And it's, again, I'm not saying, like, I think it's like anything. Like when you have a tool, that's what technology does, and that's what happened with the printing press, right? Look up how yellow journalism took hold with the printing press. And obviously, with every, massive leap in technology, and social media, it's not just the internet. Social media, Web 2 was a specific jump within, that information thing. So it wasn't just the website, because websites were still somewhat difficult to set up, still expensive to set up. You still, unless you were self-taught and like me and learned how to do it, there was still a barrier to entry, right, to set up a website. But there's a few sort of mini steps along the way, which was like Web 2.0 and social media, and also sort of, things like WordPress, platforms like WordPress. But then you've sort of got these mini sort of Web 2.2 and 2.3, these little steps along the way with, Wix and Squarespace, where, setting up a website was easy and cheap, and people thought that it was easy and cheap. So they valued it less. They didn't realize that it was, with greater access, obviously, you're going to have people, first of all, not respect it or value it. Like that's just a fundamental of business, which is that the less people pay for something, the less they value it. And the problem with social media and these websites where they sort of offer free web builders or anything like that. You see that with the industry in general, where, people who, something that I would have charged, $50,000 to $100,000 to develop, someone will go in and just make it with Wix and think that those are comparable things. And it's like, well, they're not. But, there is an element of, like these things, none of these problems are new. But the problem with, I think, especially the political commentary podcast content space, okay, is that the algorithms are geared for drama and conflict, okay. It rewards bad behavior. But it also, I think there's a lot of self-bullshit that goes in with this kind of thing, where people are actually hiding a lot of their impulses and the worst parts of themselves and sort of rationalizing it. And that's the part that I kind of want to talk about, because I've been through this. Like, like the iterations of my blog that you see are sort of heavily redacted. Okay, so a lot of the things that I sort of found myself in the media for, or have sort of everything that I've gone viral for, have been something that I, in retrospect, wish it had been something different. Wish it had been something more positive. Wish it had been something, I thought it through a little more. Okay. But because I have sort of, fucked around and found out with this sort of viral thing, and I know how to do it and I know how it works up until recently, the algorithms have obviously, like, if you find yourself on the receiving end of this shit, you can't get out of it without, a massive amount of funding and advertising. There's not really much you can do at the moment. But, let's say pre 2016, or even sort of 2018, it was good for business to polarize people and to provoke people and to sort of, stoke the flames of controversy, or relitigate ideas that have actually, if you look at the policies, or you actually took 5 minutes to look into like the history of something, or, like the policy details and reasoning, that you actually see that like it has been discussed. Like that's one of those, I think that's one red flag, I think, with a lot of these sort of, I did it too. Like when I first started doing YouTube and I was learning the ropes and I was learning what works, like I deliberately set up this sort of verboten thing where I would interview people who were specific. I'd go through that certain formula of interviewing these controversial figures and do the thing. And you get rewarded for it. Okay. So anyone who claims to be punished by these things for doing that kind of content, that's a lie. Okay. You get penalized for doing long form, unedited, complex, sort of more like this kind of, authentic sort of stuff, right? You get rewarded for uploading sort of videos that are sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes, which means you have to, basically do a listicle if you're dealing with politics, okay, or drama, or start some shit, okay? So it needs to be uploads. Like live streams on YouTube get no algorithmic love at all, okay, unless you're also uploading clips, okay? You also, conflict gets rewarded. So, getting that engagement. So if you get audience from, like at the moment, you're seeing that with Vaush and Anna Kasparian, this sort of drama, right? Or this React content debate where everyone starts shit with each other, and their audiences go and start shit on every channel, and that overall lifts the whole thing. The algorithm sees, and basically there's this whole machine. The algorithm sees that everyone wants that content. It feeds that drama content, but no one sort of pauses and goes, you know what, maybe this, when I say no one, I never trust anyone who says that no one's talking about it. Trust me, there's enough video uploaded. There's plenty of people talking about anything you want. You just got to seek it out, right? But I'm talking about what's promoted on, like this self-fulfilling problem of, a lot of it does come down to the fact that these things are outside of our control and we need to exist within this framework, but not let this stuff, affect, kind of staying solid inside, sorry, I'm trying to think of the words and obviously I'm not feeling great, but staying true to who you are and being aware of things like, that you are being manipulated for profit by anyone, whether it is just to get you angry or to get you to go over and start some crap, to join a pylon, like all of those things. Every person is being used, sometimes literally, sometimes, in a big scale way, sometimes in a small scale way. You're being used as a mule for various things, and it's okay to do that, okay? But you should bring it to the front of your mind. It's like when we're talking about, living in a capitalist system, okay? You're not a hypocrite for living in a capitalist system. We live within the capitalist system. So doing that, you're not really, it's not hypocritical to have to live and survive within that system and critique the system that we're in and want a different way or a better way of running things. It's the same thing with this content factory, which is that, you can operate in a capitalist system with an open mind about what you're trading at various, what you're giving up in within that system to achieve certain things. Like, to go for a corporate job, you give up certain abilities to express yourself, or, in order to, achieve what you want to achieve, you have to compromise certain things. And it's more about what you want to give up. That's the thing. It's like, it's all these trade-offs. It's like, there is no world where things are exactly the way you want them to be. And I think that that's sort of where, like I talk about this, like it does link very much to these podcast bros. Okay. And I mean bros, because there's a lot of women who do it too. Usually they're like, whatever. But anyway, but there's a lot of there's this culture, and I've seen it, and it's like, I don't think I want to engage in it anymore. Like, I've gone through this thing where I'm trying to fix my ex account, right? And I'm trying to figure out what I can do to get out of it. So I changed my username so that, any scripts that are targeting my username can't sort of scrape it. I've removed like as many swears as I can, right? Is what I can think of. I'm kind of, I'm at the stage where I may even just delete and like get rid of every old thing like past 3 months or whatever, right? Because it's important to me. Again, it's like, what do you have to give up in order to accomplish what you want? Like sitting around being angry and shouting at things and shouting at the void and being angry and moaning all the time is not really a way to get what you want. All it does is just push people further away. And I find myself, everyone does. That's humans do that. But the internet creates this environment where you never actually sit around and think about whether it's working for you, because you'll always, misery loves company, and you'll always find someone who's like willing to commiserate with you. Some people, and again, it's that whole, and this is, I think, very much a Gen X thing, right? Where you pretend that it's cool, like this angle of, we are rebels, we are wrong thinkers, we are having the dangerous conversations that no one will have. Trust me, guys, they're having them. They've probably been had. Okay. And we watch this, like I talked about that with the nuclear and gas thing. It's like, we've had those discussions for 50 years. You keep losing. It's settled. It's done. You're not being edgy by bringing this stuff up and relitigating things that are just not viable. Okay. You're just obstructing things. We're seeing this happen with the Greens at the moment, where watch Friendly Geordie's video on this is really good, but they're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. They're relitigating things. They're not arguing from a place of actual implementation or anything like that. They're just being obstructionist for obstructionist's sake, because it's basically just a branding exercise to fight the man. Like, what are you fighting? What are you actually fighting for? And I think that's been an ongoing theme, which is that, and I think Gen X in particular, I think we culturally went through this whole, the rage against the machine thing, where, a band full of lawyers, lawyers and accountants who were raging against the machine. And it's this vague, non-specific, it may as well be, we're mad at the sun. Like, what does it actually mean? And I'm seeing this unholy, okay, and I use that quite specifically and deliberately, this bizarre idea that Russell Brand, like Dave Rubin's a fucking idiot, but Dave Rubin turning around and saying, the intellectual dark web, okay, and I've talked about them before quite a bit, and why I fell for their nonsense, and then promptly fell away, was because of this, which is this idea that you can dabble in, first of all, relitigating ideas on a podcast and have any impact, which you can't, okay? It's content for them, okay? But second of all, that that fascism and fascistic politics is something that can be dabbled with, okay? Or that you can find common ground with people whose worldview is so fundamentally different that and oppressive that you just can't sort of, like, and it's like I just see so many people doing this drift where they are. I mean, I don't understand how anybody, again, I try not to comment too much on American domestic politics details other than sort of how it affects us, but this drift towards like actual fascists. If you look at Ron DeSantis's policies and actions, he is a fascist, okay? His policies are fascistic. Matt Walsh, absolutely fascistic. And the thing about fascists is that they may be anti-establishment. Yes, that's what they are. But they're anti-establishment in a way that is like anti-society and anti the system because they want to replace it with a fucking... It's not the same. And so they're going to... And that's the thing where I'm seeing so many lefties just do this drift. And and again... It's just content, but it's also not just content because it does actually have an impact in the ballot box around these oppressive policies, around the way that, like the Greens, we're actually looking at maybe if they won't back down, you have a double dissolution for a government where things are, that fixing things. It's absolutely sabotaging the Labor government right now. Okay, now again, they're right. Like that's what the balance of power is for. Okay, get it. I'm not saying that they can't use that to sort of negotiate what they want, but they're going in a way that's like, well, it's just it's based on content, internet content. It's like super online culture wars bullshit, and they're abstracting the people that are actually just doing the work and doing the policy work, okay? And that's been, and this is downwind. This does have a political impact. This relitigation of nuclear is a distraction. It won't pass because the same obstructionist fuckheads that are blocking the housing bill right now are the same people that you need to win over in order to get nuclear happening, and it won't happen because it's not in their platform. It's just not viable. And so there's these guys that are like, edgy, oh, well, we're just going to have, this is, like the nuclear one is a good example. We're going to have dangerous conversations. They're actually not that edgy. You're harking back and you won't take the L on and admit that it's done. And it's like this is the problem with these sort of personas where they're angry at like everything. Okay, and this is a Gen X thing. Like the thing about Gen X, right? And I was thinking about this. Like I am 79, so I can opt in and out of Gen X, and I can pretend to be either one. Right now, I'm a millennial. And then I'll be Gen X when it suits me. But I'm saying like that 90s Gen Xer, right? Your reality bites, quintessential, irony driven, flan wearing Gen Xer, anti-establishment, rage against the machine. Everything's fucking pointless. I'm going to ride everything, like you get what I'm saying, right? In culture, that's fine. Like if you're a comedian, that edge is great. If you're a writer, Hunter S. Thompson, wonderful writer, okay? Wasn't such a happy fella, okay? Comedians, okay? Yes, there's an element of that in the craft. And when you straddle that, and I think people have gone through that when we all become public figures, we all become content creators, we all become these larger than life representations of like, who we are. That machine can sweep us up. And like it did that to me, right? This whole building a whole persona based on sort of anger and snark and sarcasm and irony and, it's cool in your 20s, okay? It's not so cool in your like 30s and 40s, okay? And like every other day I see some freaking dickhead culture wars account where they're like, we're having wrong opinions. Oh my God, how dare they? They're going to call us fascists, the thing that nobody wants you to see. Like, it's just, first of all, it's all just fucking laughing because it's literally the internet. You can see and say pretty much anything you want and people can find it. It's just, you might not make millions of dollars doing it. Okay. If you can think of it, someone's talking about it. They're talking about it. Okay. Your idea of what politics is based on 2 cable news like empires and nothing more. That's your left and right is CNN versus Fox. That's it. You're an idiot. Okay. If your politics is, determined by media, then you've got brain rot. So anyway, the culture wars is just that. TV wars, okay, ratings wars, tribal wars based on media. It's got nothing to do with politics, but it has a great impact on politics. Okay. And so, we're having difficult conversations or, ooh, controversy. Ooh, look at me. It's like, that's what 8-year-olds do. So they poke shit with sticks and see what happens, okay? If you're a man in your 50s, okay, there's an element of sadness to that because, and again, I understand where it's coming from because I've lived through this, right? I battle with this all the time, trying to untether myself from, the easy joke, the snark, because the jokes are easy, okay? And actually showing up, because to actually show up and be genuine and care about things and have hope, okay? That's that's not something that either sells, okay, first of all, but it's also not something that is generally rewarded online, right? So you kind of got to be edgier to capture people, but you need something of substance underneath that, or it's just because I just find it really weird, this whole I don't understand this whole vouch thing, where they can just say these horrible things about people, okay, and be rewarded. I don't understand how somebody's financial livelihood can be based on being awful. And that seems to be deep in America, again, with free speech. And obviously, monetizing alienation and dissatisfaction and, that sort of edginess. I find it quite lazy, but, for me, in terms of, it's easy for me to shit out a rant. Okay, that's easy to do. I'm good at that. I'm good at shitting out a rant, writing a joke and a one-liner. But to write an earnest, sincere, well thought out thing that isn't relitigating something stupid or, this is what the IDW do, is relitigate things that are pretty much settled. Okay, that things have moved on. They don't like that it's moved on. And they're basically, like I said, they're the people where you've had a 6-hour meeting, you've come to the conclusion, and the guy goes, I want to go back to the beginning. It's and relitigating stuff over and over again, okay, and it's been done to death. The nuclear debate is one of those. It's been done to death. You're lost. It's not viable, and it's like, oh no, but that's wrong think. I'm not allowed to say it. No, you've been saying it. You had your room. There's whole committees dedicated to relitigating this over and over again, and it keeps coming back with the same response. The answer is it's not viable. And but people continue being caught. Like the trans thing, you're seeing it happen again. The gender wars, it's just this continual spiral of you get a new lefty who says the wrong thing. They get under attack. They then start to defend themselves. Then the right love bombs them. The right's nice to me. The left's horrible to me. It's okay. And then they start shitting. And the left won't take responsibility for pushing people to the right. The right welcome people with open arms. Suddenly you find yourself at that fucking cul-de-sac where you have to make it, because suddenly you're in a contract with Rumble where you have to interview Ron DeSantis, Russell Brand, and and softball Tucker Carlson. I mean, like I've said, obviously, I'm talking about them as figures, okay? Not the individuals are nice, but you need to get away from the individual was nice to me and the political impact that they're actually having. And now I see, I've been wanting to talk a little bit about Russell Brand, particularly because it's he's a fucking lefty. And he's like gone, and it's obvious that this is just a contractual obligation to platform all these people on Rumble. He's in deep. He's fucking signed a contract, obviously. He doesn't believe this stuff. And if he does, then that's a crazy 180. And you sit there and you go, well, okay, I like it. I think that it could be de-radicalizing for a lot of people to sit there and sit in that space. I've talked about that before, like Joe Rogan. Can be, as long as they're aware of it, which I don't think they are, okay, which is this politically homeless, radical, enlightened centrist, fucking can't we all be friends thing, not realizing that there's been thousands of people, myself included, who've gone down that path. They've experienced that love bomb. They show up, they offer you the money, if you say the things, and they nudge you to the point where you are then stuck, okay, in a contract or something like that. And I would never sign that kind of contract. But, you know, those conversations started to come up. I started to be approached because I was growing. There was a point where I was growing rapidly. And then it's like, well, no, I don't support this. Bang, mass report you. Fuck you. You are nothing. You've fucked off the left. You've burnt bridges there. Like, I take responsibility for my thing. Like, I burned bridges there. Like, I sometimes, oh my God, I love Facebook memories because Facebook fucking reminds you who you were and it shows you your growth. If you're reading and you go, oh my God, like I went a little too far, okay, down that thing because I thought I was helping. And I know that like everyone is trying to do the right thing here, but it's like, this isn't just content, okay? This isn't activism. This stuff has I can absolutely set a watch to the way that, you know, leaving the left goes here, 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 here. People like Vaush and Hassan's a little bit more reasonable, but like people like that who actively fucking, you know, push people away and then complain when they push them away. Okay, but then there's this whole right-wing ecosystem, but then they've got nowhere to go. So that, you know, this is what evangelical Christian churches do. It's why they hang around at AA. It's why they hang around at it's why they set up all these like drug rehabilitation things. Why Scientology have drug rehabilitation, because they can target the vulnerable. Target people, give them a home, give them, you know, because they're trying to recruit people who are vulnerable and have nowhere to go into their batshit cult. And it's the same thing with this, like, you know, but this actually does have political implications. And so, you know, you're sitting there playing with the edgy shit. Oh, look, I'm just talking to this person. Ooh, aren't I naughty? You know, I'm naughty. Oh, but then there's the people who are like engaging with these like good ideas, or, you know, these ideas that they have in common with these people. And you've seen it through this gender discussion, right? You've seen it through the gender discussion where, you know, you can have a minor concern and suddenly you're fucking anti-vax. You're talking about, you know, all of this sort of like conservative shit. You're being homophobic. You are bullying people. You are being rotten, and you're advocating and you're voting for you're changing your vote to far right parties all of a sudden with no awareness for the fact that there is a funnel there. Okay. Well, no awareness or a refusal to hear, which is the main thing. Okay. It's why people like me get fucking suppressed, because I talk about the like actual mechanisms that, you know, these funnels, okay? The Greens use the same funnel. Join now. They're coming to get us. It's all just online marketing and fundraising. It's got nothing of substance, okay? And so, but, you know, like these edgy podcast guys who are like, ooh, that thing that no one's ever done before except for everyone, and everyone who does that goes in a certain direction because they know where the money is, which is in dabbling with fascism, okay? Thinking that you can fuck around with fascism and it not blow up in your face, okay? And I'm seeing a whole lot of people who I actually care about. Like, there's a lot of people who I'm friends with who are, you know, content creators or like podcasters or anything like that, and they think that they can just, oh, well, you know, what would you, it's like, when this goes where it's going to go, you are going to have to face that you have been part of this. Okay. Now, I already did. I got out earlier because I knew, obviously, you know, because I'm politically literate and I know, like, I was like, no, this is fucking fascist, right? But then they do this thing. Oh, well, everyone's calling us a fascist. Oh, no, I'm far right. No, stop straw manning that criticism. Okay, now obviously I'm not in a position to be lecturing someone like Russell Brand or Jimmy Dore. I have a feeling that Russell Brand has a contract with Rumble. He is fucking locked in, and he already sees it the way that I hope that he sees it. Okay, I imagine he does. He's not a dumb man. Okay, but you reach a point where you go, you know what? I have to back out of this, or I like, no, this is okay. I've been hoodwinked. I was wrong. These aren't the guys that I thought they were, and I worry that the amount of money that I imagine he's been is again, it's just I wish I could reach these guys. Where being anti-establishment in general makes you, that's like I don't know how you see that, because they do this thing. Oh well, everything is fascist. No, Wes, I'm actually giving you substantive feedback, which is that anti-establishment rhetoric without an actual substantive policy direction, okay, just yelling at stuff, yelling at clouds, tearing shit down, relitigating stuff that's been settled, constantly just rattling the cage, doing all of that sort of stuff, okay, that's the essence of fascism, okay. Revolution has a specific purpose, okay, which is, and again, that's why revolutionary socialists, okay, tend to get hoodwinked into fascism, because their rage gets weaponized. I've talked about fascists, fascism being like a twister, like a hurricane that goes through a town. And it sort of goes through the street and it picks people up along the way, okay? And eventually it sort of accumulates everyone. It's but then eventually it just dumps everyone out at sea and it's all fucking over, okay? And that's what happens with fascism. And so, you've got to be really conscious of not being caught up in this. Now, I'm not saying that the content factory, I'm saying content is separate from politics, but it has an impact on politics, because obviously media and propaganda and all those things are extremely persuasive in political land, right? But if you're sitting around and being all if you're bullying a teacher or a nurse or bullying someone or harassing someone, I think that's ground zero for you to look at yourself and go, what am I participating in? A big part of my early concerns around this sort of anti-woke stuff was obviously the fact that they were ignoring the answer. They were constantly asking the question that has been answered, especially in 2023, this wokeism shit, that's been well answered by myself and many others on the left, okay? Plenty have been talking about it. It has been well answered and addressed. And it is just an online radicalization funnel for fundraising and branding and optics and all that sort of stuff, right? There's lots of competing interests. If you're thinking that it's anything other than that, then you are engaging in the same old US evangelical moral panic that sort of, does red scares and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so first off, settled. You don't need to relitigate this. It's been done, okay? So it's just funny to see people who are just new to the culture wars suddenly starting up, and it's end wokeness. And they're making a lot of money, because there's a new fool born every minute. It's this new form of fucking political MLM, where you can just go, I'm having difficult conversations. No, you're relitigating things that most adults have moved on from. You are a grown-ass human being. You're not in your 20s. I'm all edgy and hipster and, and I think that is the thing about, I was talking about Gen X, where, where Gen X, we moan about how we weren't given any kind of go at running things. But we've spent 20 years telling everyone that running things is stupid and that you shouldn't care and that it's all pointless. And it's well, are you surprised when people say you can't fucking have a go? It's maybe we should grow up, and maybe we should have taken charge, and maybe we should have stepped up as a generation and gone, you know what, it's our turn now and we're going to build a better world. And I'm not surprised millennials hate our guts. Okay, now I am a millennial and a Gen Xer, so it's obviously between worlds. But I see the older Gen X people who refuse to grow up, refuse to, there was a time where it was cool to be edgy and anti-authority and anti-everything, and oh my God, see a thing and criticize it no matter what it is, because but then just never actually come up with any real solutions or answers or anything like that. And you know, all it's easy to snark. It's easy to go, oh, you know, it's all fucked. Can't do anything. You know, I was talking about learned helplessness before as well, right? And it's like, how is that achieving anything? And I want people to slide out of that. And that's part of the reason why I feel like in 2023 that, you know, it's okay. If anything, it's probably the edgier thing to do is to care. And the edgier thing to do is to have hope. The edgier thing to do is to go, here's my plan. The edgier thing to do is to put yourself out there genuinely and go, you know what? I'm showing up every day, stream, sick, lights, fucking whatever. And I'm doing that and I'm being sincere and hoping that that makes other people think about it and go, you know what? You know, things aren't so fucking bad. You know, like and it's not to gaslight you because like obviously there's this whole cottage industry around you know, the toxic positivity and stuff, but you know, they do have a point in the sense that, you know, like being horrible all the time doesn't get you invited anywhere. It makes you lonely and isolated. Like the fact that people come to me thinking that I'm the person that would tear something to shreds like that, I don't like that. You know, like I want people to come to me because they want me to because they respect what I've got to say and they think I come from a good place, not because I'm going to be the leader of their, like, you know, brigading or that, you know, and I often, you know, again, this is something that I've always battled with, which is, you know, with ADHD, impulse control is a big thing. And so, you know, saying the easy, snarky, lazy, mean thing, you know, or the swear words or you know, whatever. Okay. It's, you know, it's on brand and it's a good brand, but it's like you got to, sometimes you can descend a little too much into negativity and you can descend away from solutions and you just end up being mad at everything. You do nothing. You sit around and you just play video games and you moan and you critique fucking movies that, you know, so if you don't like the movies, then why don't you just make a movie that you do like? Like, why are you like, well, you don't like this, so why don't you build something that you do like rather than moaning about it? If you don't like a certain you know, it's easy to write a blog post. Okay, it's not, you know, it's easy to write that shit. I can shit that out in 2 hours, okay? It's like, it's not difficult to shit out content. It is more difficult to make something different and do something. And the people that are actually doing stuff, I'm sorry, but they're not hanging out on Twitter or X or whatever and complaining about everything. Okay. You know, like I unfortunately, the internet is my job and persuading people to get off the internet is a big part of my job. So I have to be there. But if I was doing anything else, I wouldn't be on there. You know, it's not where things get done. You know, and I think that that's been the mistake over the years is that, you know, people very much, and journalists, this is journalists and like, you know, culture war shit and cancel mobs and all that shit. Those people are very much to blame here, which is that people seem to be they seem to be sorely mistaken in thinking that like that tearing someone down on Twitter is activism. Destroying people. It's like, it's not. It's mob rule. Like, it's not. It's just, you know, it's joining a pylon. Okay. And that's why, you know, obviously I won't join those things. Okay. So, I'm just looking at the chats. Yeah. So constantly pushing. So Carolina Crane, constantly pushing the envelope trope always shat me off. Yeah. It's that whole, that hipster thing. And again, I kind of come out of that cohort of like internet snark. Like, I'm not saying I don't understand it from a content point of view. And especially when you are like, snark can be funny. But the problem is that you need to be funny as well. You need, like, there's a fine line between, like, some people often confuse sarcasm with wit, okay? You don't want to be a sarcastic person. Wit is different. Okay. Wit is a skill. Wit is something that, you know, like a good one-liner or whatever. But sarcasm generally has an edge to it. There's a cruel edge to it. Okay. That's not good. I've been in a marriage of someone who would just neg and be sarcastic all the time, right? I have a tendency, you know, and there is a line there because sometimes you say a joke and it doesn't land and it comes out and you intended it to be like a witty thing or, you know, but it comes out and it's hurtful. that's unfortunately part of the process. And that's the problem with Twitter as well in general, and tweets in general, is that sometimes you're going to have things that don't land, and that's okay. But apologizing for that there's nothing wrong with going, it didn't land, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't mean it. I was playing with a joke. It didn't land. It worked in my head. It's okay to be transparent about that. But if your whole job is to just be nasty to people and hide and pretend that that's comedy, there was a shift I like Ricky Gervais' comedy, right? His earlier stuff particularly. And there was a shift with him, and I think he shifted back. I think he sort of self-corrected a little bit, somewhat, okay? Not always, but somewhat. And I've said before, where there's a difference between provoking people to challenge them. So like, if you want to go provocative and poke them, like Louis C.K. is really good at that, right? Where he will poke those things in order to challenge them, right? That's a skill, okay? But then there's challenging people just to provoke them. And I know that those are synonyms, but there's subtle differences, which is that you're starting something with the intent of just wounding someone and getting them to react. The thing that a comedian does is that they do it to make a bigger point, or to make you laugh, or to see things from a different, like wit, from a different perspective, right? Whereas, and sometimes you don't know which one's which. And it is very easy to fall, into the lazy punching down shit, because there are people that will find that funny because it's cruel. And that is that whole, and again, that happens anywhere. That's like the internet and stuff like that. But I came out of that world of snark and comedy blogs and, like writing things and, there's sort of Just Jared and Perez Hilton and, those kind of snark communities. So that's a balance. Okay. Television without pity, right? Those recaps. But there has to be wit attached to it. It has to be something else attached to it, much like this, like, I'm edgy for the sake of being edgy. Yeah, but to what end? I'm having difficult conversations. Okay, why? For what policy outcome? What process? Why? You can have arguments and get, gather, I'm sure you can get paid good money having conversations with fucking Tucker Carlson and, platforming, like, again, Tucker Carlson's different because he's a big pull. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. If someone who's going to grow, but at the same time, just it's just acting out. It's like juvenile acting out. I'm just going to say it because mum said I couldn't. But you've got no focus around what you're doing. Okay. Now, I obviously, I played with that early on when I started to do this stuff, and the right fucking, like, they lap it up. Okay, they love a lefty who's confused about what's going on. And obviously I cottoned on pretty quick to what was going on, that this was just a recruitment funnel using bots, and like the IDW just provided this sort of polite face of just asking questions and stuff in order to sort of make things respectable. And you've got to be very careful about that. And now you've got Dave Rubin and people like that saying that somehow there's this new intellectual dark web. Anything that has the word intellectual and Dave Rubin in the same sentence is not to be fucking trusted, because he's an idiot. But his list was, Ron DeSantis, Russell Brand, Glenn Greenwald. And then, Russell Brand, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, you see them sort of dabble in this space. And to an extent, like Elon Musk, like you kind of, and Elon Musk is a good example of someone who's sort of dabbling with this stuff. And I will criticize and defend wherever I need to. Okay. And full disclosure, I'm sort of wanting to work at X. Okay. I'd like to, mostly because I love the product and I'd like to fix it and be a sane voice within the organization. There's some really good, smart people working there. Like it's not him. Okay. I think the product's going to be fine. And I don't think he can single-handedly ruin it. I think it's going to be okay. But there is this creep that happens. And, like I've said, like Russell Brand can be de-radicalizing. I think Jimmy Dore he's got audience capture and is sort of heading but that's a dangerous game. It is a very dangerous game. And eventually you just, you end up, and I think, okay, let me refine my thoughts. I'm surprised by Russell Brand because I will defend him. Even now, I think that on balance, if you watch what he's saying, he can probably be de-radicalizing of people, because people are watching so much far-right content that doesn't correct it or doesn't sort of pull it left. that, and he's got such a wide audience that he could actually pull people out of that funnel, okay? But he's also in it, in the sense contractually obliged to sort of, have conversations with people, softball interviews, things like with Ron DeSantis. Like if you look at Ron DeSantis' policy, like it's just a no-brainer. The guy's a fucking fascist. Like it's just not. But the problem with this sort of funnel is that they'll go, everyone's saying we're fascists. Ha ha. It's like, no, me, political scientist, I read fascism. I don't use that lightly, okay, at all. I don't use those words lightly. Okay, and guess what? I'm saying this is fascism. Okay, Donald Trump, fascistic, demagogue, fuckwit. Like I'm quite happy to separate. I'm not someone who just turns around. And this is the problem that this online left. I don't know whether they've done it on purpose. Again, I've said there's a good chance that a lot of these anime bots and these Antifa bots and shit are actually a campaign by the right to dilute the word fascism to the point where nobody will hear it anymore. And that's very, very worrying for me, because you don't fuck around with it. You can't dabble in fascism. You can, and that's what these edgelord guys are doing. They're kind of they're doing it without, they think they're in control of it, but they're not. Like nudging is very powerful. It's very gradual. You can be, especially when you start to be getting a lot of money and a lot of love, and that love bomb. Okay, now we've watched it, and these edgelord bros, and you watch again, a year ago I would have defended Joe Rogan and said, look, where do the curious go? But he's, it's a delicate kind of thing, right? So difficult conversations with who, or is it just but the thing is, this is the paradox that I've sort of talked about, which is that you've got an algorithm that rewards that behavior, okay, where it's addictive content. People love the drama. They love the spectacle, okay. They think it's just a TV show. And I think that it's fine. Honestly, I have no problem. I love fucking Honey Boo Boo and, all the Toddlers and Tiaras, all those fucked up reality shows. I love Judge Judy. I love that stuff, because I know that it is just entertainment. But the problem with maybe this is just around the regulation of political content in particular. And it's the same thing with financial services or lawyers or anything like that. Maybe the answer is that the regulation around the industry. Or something like that. Again, I think that there's a regulatory gap that needs to occur here. Where, obviously, election interference and, all those other policy issues and policy problems, balancing those with speech. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? I'm retraining the way I am. But, when you are doing political commentary, especially fucking around with things that are going to blow up pretty badly in your face. I don't know how anyone can somehow explain away these anti-LGBTQ bills that are coming through the pipe in the US. Okay, if you're the UK has a different battle. Yes, that was about the substantive issue of sex and gender, and that's been largely settled in the court. It's kind of settled, okay. But now it's got jet fuel poured on it by the evangelical right in the US to go full fucking anti-schools, school choice. They're going hardcore for religious education. They're putting PragerU in schools, all this sort of hardcore lunatic evangelical Christian stuff. You're seeing Matt Walsh online, I saw this last night. Because I've decided to not engage in horrible things anymore, then Matt Walsh shows up being a fuckwit. And I'm like, oh no, well, this is a challenge. I'm going to try not to do that. But, okay, which is that he has now gone, okay, so you're a feminist, and you've been going, well, gender dysphoria isn't real. Okay. And I've always rejected that for a start, because it is a syndrome. It is you're not qualified to say that, right? That's bullshit. And also in your thinking, if you think gender dysphoria isn't real, it's not a leap to think that other things aren't real too. And that happened like I said, it's clockwork. You can set your fucking watch to it, which is that he's now turning around and saying, well, ADHD isn't real either. You just aren't responsible. You just grow up and man up. You don't need drugs to be an adult. That's horrible, and it is not true. And if you know, and you sign up? Can you co-sign? I've said this before. When you sign up to something that seems benign, and that's that just having conversations IDW stuff or the edge guys, can you co-sign to the extreme version of that? Are you willing to co-sign? And I'm not doing the slippery slope stuff. I'm saying you're allowed to have an issue, you know, like a single issue or whatever. But single issue activism, you need to, if you're just single issue, you need to be willing to co-sign to the extremes of every ally. And that's, you know, again, that's why I'm in the Labor Party, because I can live with the extremes of that party because, you know, the most extreme Labor Party position is neoliberal capitalism, okay? And like, or you know, green hairs disrupting meetings. Those are the sort of edges. But if you're kind of a moderate and you're like, you know, you need to be able to back the extreme result sometimes, okay? I'm not saying all the time, obviously, because, you know, good ideas come from everywhere and everyone gets a voice and, you know, we live in a democracy. However, you got to think about this content, right? It's just like, so Judge Judy is now Judy Justice, not remotely relevant. I love Judge Judy, yeah, but it's not how the legal system works. It's entertainment. And it's the same thing with political commentary. But I'm seeing this, and ordinarily I would go, look, again, I get it. I get this anti-establishment thing. But anti-establishment without any definition of what that means, that becomes fascistic in its face. You become a useful idiot. I don't like using these words, but you know, you become a mule or a useful idiot for people who really want to do a lot of harm just because they're against the libs. You know, it's like, well, that's not really politics. That's content. And ordinarily, and I think a lot of people go, well, it's again, yet another paradox around the internet, which is this idea that you are, you know, you market yourself as making a difference, but really in your mind you go, well, it doesn't really have an impact, because if you thought about the impact of what you were doing, you wouldn't be doing it. You get what I'm saying? And it's like, well, okay, well, you can dabble in triggering people, own the SJWs and having these like stupid debates and reacts and, you know, calling, but people watch it and they head somewhere else. Okay, your audience heads somewhere else. What related content are they going to get because you are creating these headlines? With you calling, you know, again, it's like you got to take responsibility for that. It's not just about you and your numbers and your metrics, but about the audience that you curate. So when they're watching you, you're not just responsible for them watching you. You're responsible for, you know, the tags that you use, the titles that you use, the descriptions that you use, you know, the language that you use and the rhetoric. The way that the algorithm works is that it forms clusters and relationships around those things. So if you're saying, you know, Anna Kasparian destroys, or Bausch destroys Anna, or Anna destroys that, or fucking owned, that particular algorithms are stupid in that way, okay? In the fact that if you're using that inflammatory language, okay, all it sees is the inflammatory language and will take them in that inflammatory direction. Does that make sense? It is. It's very much a race to the bottom, as Matt said, right? And it's like you need to, and this is where the gap in understanding around how the selfishness, it's basically inherently, you know, short-sighted, more about you and what you can gain, like either politically or in terms of audience. Like, it's not unrelated to the Greens and the way that they're blocking the housing stuff at the moment. It is obviously their right to do so. They have the balance of power and all that sort of stuff. But the motivation is very much about the optics of being seen to be, you know, anti-establishment, anti-Labor, you know, so they can recruit more members and pull more votes away from the party and ultimately hand this shit to the Liberal Party, who will ruin everything. Okay, good on you. You're done. You're awesome. Awesome. Well done. But, you know, like with a reformist government who needs to do reformist stuff because the legislative and legal framework is so dog shit that, you know, like, they're such idiots. Anyway, but, you know, it's, oh, look at me. I'm just fighting the man. Okay, which man? What's his job? What man are you angry at? Okay. What do you mean by the establishment? You're talking to Tucker Carlson and a presidential, the preferred presidential candidate for the United States. How on earth is that Governor of Florida? That is not anti-establishment. I'm sorry, but you're a millionaire. You've signed on to Rumble on $1 million contracts, and you're radicalizing people on, like, anti-vax is not anti-establishment. Anti-vax is stupid. Like anybody who looks at pharma understands the complexities of pharma. Pharma's kept me alive. It is also, they're also corrupt. Both things can be true at once. Okay? Pharma has, the problem is capitalism, you fucking idiots. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. But, it feels Python-esque. Those Monty Python sketches where they're like, we're fighting against the man. Who's the man? Which man? Where is he? Oh, he's over there. Get him. The man. It's this blurry picture in the background. We're just fighting the man. Any man. We don't know what. We don't know why, but we're just following to fight the man. It's like, what do you mean? But anti-establishment rhetoric being run by idiots like Dave Rubin and and Russell Brand, I think, is just in fucking deep. I hope, and Joe Rogan is in deep. Musk, I don't know. What the fuck? That's brainworms. But again, I'm not saying that, I will defend these guys, and I think the data's out. The jury's out on whether they might have a de-radicalizing impact as well. But they have power. They have a lot of political power. And so what you say, Joe Rogan came out and said that, voting machines are probably corrupt and shit, Dominion, blah, blah, blah. And it's you do know that Fox News just lost a lawsuit. That's what got, and it's dude, you're going to get sued because they literally just won a defamation suit. Guys, you're fucking around. I don't think you understand what's quite happening here, and it's very frustrating, right? But yeah, so, it's just really weird because this whole, and it does link very much. I'm going to have to go because my voice, you can hear it starting to tap out. But you can see it in these edgelords, right? These guys where they're just we're just mad at it. We're just going to talk to anyone and have difficult conversations and relitigate stuff that's been settled and whip up an audience and tell them that no one on the left is talking about this thing, but take no responsibility for the fact that people will sort of disappear into whatever funnel your audience is nudged by an algorithm because you just completely manipulate those algorithms in your favor. And it's you need to take responsibility for that because right now, classic point. We are now seeing a direct fucking thing where you cannot logically have spent the last 5 years arguing that gender dysphoria isn't real, which it is. And, but logically the next step is that ADHD isn't real because it's the same argument. And that's where you find yourself having to look, and that's how the right wins. The right win by the logical cherry-picked fucking nudges of years and years and years where they go, well, you said that this isn't real. Why is this the same? And guess what they get to do? Blame everyone. For, their whole worldview is blaming the individual for failings of capitalism. You can have a philosophical conversation. I've talked about the psychiatric industry about ADHD, right? I do think a lot of these disorders, gender dysphoria, ADHD, some of them are a result of, capitalism and gender norms and, but we have to also survive within the system. Okay. So it's, if we lived in socialism, would I have ADHD or would I just be able to be free to be creative and distracted? Who knows? But we don't live in that system. So right now I need that to function and do what I do. It's a whole paradigm, but they're not willing to have that. They're not having that conversation. They're talking about how they can bully and harass and blame the individuals and their failings like evangelical psychopaths do for systemic problems. Do you see how you've just been nudged into this worldview without your consent and suddenly co-signing all these horrible bills and suddenly going, oh, well, DeSantis is polite and Trump is rude, so therefore DeSantis is better than Trump. Ooh, hell no. I don't think you understand that, Trump's fully, I mean, you've got your problems with, but most of the people on the left, even like the Majority Report, they go, well, Trump's not ideal, but I would prefer Trump to DeSantis. Okay, that because they say he's literally a fascist. Okay, like this Christian nationalism shit in the United States is deeply worrying, and if you're allying with that rather than actively fighting it in any way, I think that you really need to look at it. And it comes from that with snark. Yeah, so Carolina. Remember that song? That was a great song. Yeah, Pauline Hanson. Yes, exactly. It's the same thing. Now, and that's why you can, look, Pauline Hanson, I've done actually a stream on Pauline Hanson about the Australia has fallen thing. Okay. I come out of I'm a low socioeconomic family. Okay, I grew up in state housing. I grew up in, my dad was on a disabled pension. He, drank himself to death. My mum wasn't around. My grandma raised me. I grew up quite underprivileged, right? And my neighbours were all the Aboriginal kids. And like I get it, right? So I grew up in like state housing, so I was surrounded by a lot of poverty and a lot of, that's what made me. And also then as a graduate, I worked in child protection, so I understand sort of the social issues. Okay, I'm not sitting in a leafy suburb. Well, I'm now, but it's not sitting in a leafy suburb detached from the circumstances. If anything, I try to anchor myself back there every time I try to be a big, like whenever I'm trying to think about social policy. And that's the problem with the Greens, is that they're not, they're NIMBYs, not in my backyard people, okay? They're like, anyway. But the thing about Pauline Hanson, everyone in Australia who's like remotely politically educated or understands sort of the demographic makeup of Australia sort of understands One Nation, that they're a block, okay, that like if you've been to Australia at all, you know why Pauline Hanson is there, okay? She represents that protest. So in Australia, there's this, and again, America's the same, but the thing about America that's different to Australia and the UK is that in Australia, we have this thing called a protest vote, okay, which is very different in makeup because we have compulsory voting, okay. We have Carolina. Seriously, go and look. I don't know if you follow me on X. Don't look at my Twitter handles here. It's Taya Smith AU on X. I don't recognize your name. I'm sorry. But have a look. I tweeted it today. Posted it on X today. But the friendly Geordies did this. He just absolutely destroyed the Greens. And I actually used to be the secretary of the WA Greens and the policy convener in WA. And I think I lasted about, I lasted longer as secretary than I did as policy convener, because policy convener was unbearable. It was absolutely unbearable. Activists holding everyone hostage and stuff. But it's gotten worse over the years. Like WA at least had some grassroots aspects to it when I first joined the Greens. I joined the Greens off the back of the no war movement when, but the Greens has its own history, which is that the WA Greens have always been somewhat separate from the Eastern States Greens, and the Melbourne Greens in particular have always been that bougie like thing. WA has always been a little bit more grassroots, but yeah, so I mean, I come from the cohort of Dee Margetts when she got arrested for pissing right in public, and I'm a Dee Margetts Green. Originally, right? She was great. But so I come from experience, right? And but I also was in the ALP during student politics, and I've been in and out. I've got friends from everywhere, like in the Liberal Party. Do I know anyone in One Nation? I think I do. But I also, again, like it's, the individual is not the thing. But the thing about One Nation is that there's this thing called the protest vote, and it's basically a fixed set. So you've got your swinging voters. So, much like in America, you've got, most of the election comes down to a few percentage points in key seats, in marginal seats, right? But you've also got in the upper house, you've got a core percentage of people that are the protest vote. So it used to be that you'd vote, so the Australian Democrats would be that block. So right back in the day with Cheryl Kernot, Natasha Stott-Despoja, they sort of held that 10% where they were like, we don't want either major party. We want someone to sort of hold whoever wins. We want them in charge. Okay. The Greens took that in a landslide off the back of the no war movement. But Pauline also took that, the right-wing version of that. So you've kind of got that constant, the angry at everything tension between the bougie Greens and the sort of working class One Nation. Now, I would argue that One Nation, to an extent, is more of a working class party than the Greens, right? Palmer decided to just be a populist fuckwit Trump, and that's where, you'll see Palmer United and stuff like that. But you'll see good politicians come out of all of those parties, right? I would argue that, Jackie Lambie is, despite where she comes, people are these things are complicated, and, but that's how sinister and grey this area of fascism is how you can get caught, understanding how the rhetoric can get you caught up in things that you just don't necessarily. I mean, I would argue that Pauline Hanson's probably not bright enough to bring that about. But the people who sort of took over, and sort of, run One Nation, remember, what was his name? David Oldfield, and that sort of stuff. Like Mark Latham, for example, is someone who, drifted from the third way to, One Nation. So, it's moving and fluid and complicated. But that actually does help to highlight the rhetorical risk of when you are just the protest vote and you are just voting to fuck up the guys that are trying to run things. That has its own risks attached to it, which is, first of all, you don't get much done because you vote for people who are just trying to block things like the Greens at the moment, right? Again, it's their right to do it. They've got the balance of power. They have to work it out. They also, in Australia, it's maximum representation. It's compulsory voting. It's, everyone gets a say, even people you don't agree with. Okay. That's why it works so well. Okay. For the most part, but it's why we're generally more stable than something like the United States. But yeah, the WA Greens, we were sort of more about the sort of old growth forests and, that sort of old very much sort of activist party. But we did have that shift into the professional. I imagine it's dog shit now. But obviously I've got friends that are in the Greens and, I've been part of those campaigns, running the numbers, trying to figure out how you can get the preference deals and all that sort of stuff. But remember, the Greens' preference deals are to maximise for the Greens, not to maximise for the right major party to win. Like the Greens will actually split ticket between the Libs and ALP a lot of the time if there's nothing in it for us, right? Sorry, not us. At the time it was us, but, for them. And so that's not really that principled, okay? So in the event that like people have an ideological problem with voting for the Liberals, they would go, let's just make a split ticket and, and that means that, anyway, so it's a whole thing. Okay. But remember, the Greens vote in the Greens' interests, not in the interests of sort of, ideology. They just stumble on and for the most part, I would argue they're obstructionist of the things that Labor are trying to actually achieve. Again, broad sweeping brush, but, I hate these inner city fuckheads. I hate them more than anything. But, so I'll be more forgiving of someone like Pauline because, again, the racism, not good. But, again, my politics is informed by class, okay, and working class. And Pauline does, again, I grew up in an area where what Pauline speaks to is anger and, that populist anger, that angry at the establishment. I'm angry at everything, but I can't articulate why. And I'm not saying that's not dangerous. I'm saying that I understand why. And I'm also saying that this is why Labor and, that this is why Labor need to, but what that is I see One Nation as a symptom of, the ALP not reaching enough people through things like unions or, through trying to persuade. Like, I see the outcome of an election, the Greens take votes away from Labor, but a lot of the time the Greens also take votes away from One Nation and from sort of micro parties and stuff, right? So, and the Greens like to fool themselves and think that they're but they're not. They're just reactionary in a different way, but they're just sort of, an elite party. Yeah, well, I disagree with you on that. So Matt said, hate to say it, but I'm not sorry to currently be in a position to not have to vote. Well, you should. Okay, you're still an Australian citizen, so you should still be doing a postal vote. You should, because it's something that people have died for you to have the right to do, and you should get a say no matter what. It's something that I vote for. I don't vote for me. I vote for people who can't vote. If you have the right to vote, you have a responsibility to vote. I see it as a very important and pivotal responsibility. Unfortunately, the United States seem to think that but, again, it's just, we can talk about compulsory voting, but, I'm just saying. But this is this very delicate line. And this is that line where I think that with all of that in mind, when you're thinking about like my own online persona, my own language, you can unwittingly find yourself used in ways that, you don't like. And it's been weird, actually, because I think being sort of algo fucked the way that I have, it's kind of like been a weird time where I kind of reflect and I go, well, is it good that I have been having to think about these things and think about why? I mean, I'm not advocating for it. It's terrible, but I'm just saying, like thinking about the amount that I swear, it's actually a lot less than you'd think. Thinking about the sentiment. So when, algorithms are assessing what you say, they're measuring the sentiment. Is it overtly, is it positive or negative or, that sort of stuff? What is the overall tone and feel about what you put out in the world? And I think that, again, this is nothing profound. This is something that everyone goes through. If you're a sentient human being and not a man-child with a podcast, that you go, okay, well, maybe I should just show up and be nice and be sincere and, let the other part, because, there's going to be people that attack you for being sincere or being nice or saying things. But, that's on them. And there's a whole industry dedicated to being negative and being horrible. And there's, and it's just like, yeah, and I think, but, the continual race to the bottom, but if you don't vote, you feed the problem as well. So, but it's just like, well, like I've said, because Paul used to be a donkey voter, and that pissed me off when we first met. He used to say, I gave him the vote for, and I was like, you have a responsibility, like not being disengaged from the political system is understandable. But it's powerful. Like, this is what I keep saying about, like, it's the exact nihilism that I'm talking about today. This idea that you don't have power, this idea that you don't have a say, this idea that that it's pointless, that it has no impact. Of course it does. If you turn around and go, well, I'm going to look into you just go onto the ABC and look at what the various issues are and choose someone and go, you know what, okay, at least they get a say. Like, disengaging, like the thing is that, like, the race to the bottom is the disengagement and the apathy. That is the actual problem, is the apathy. Okay, and there is someone to vote for. Okay, and you feel like you're participating, and it doesn't mean you have to be a policy boffin or anything like that, but at least think about things that's the reason why we have compulsory voting, is to force people to at least think about something for 5 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, it makes our system good, and you do have power and you do get a say, and it's easy. Like, people will switch off with negative shit, but there's lots of positives about it, and it's a good system. So, anyway, I have to go. My voice is tapping out, Yeah, no, you're not going to convince me. No, they didn't. They fought and died for a political system where people participate and get a say in their future. Okay, this is the exact learned helplessness that I was talking about, which is that you do have the right to vote, you do have the right to show up and participate in the process, you do have a say. It's hard. Oh, sorry, is it hard? Is it? I don't know what to say. It's like, well, it's there for you. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna go. I love you. Thanks for watching. I've got to go and do some stuff, but I'll be back next week. Take care, and yeah. So that's all I've wanted to say is that bros suck. But what are you doing? Being, oh, I'm so edgy. Look at me doing the same thing everyone else does. It always reminds me. There's a line from Lisa Loeb's song, not the 90s. She goes, "So alternative, just like everybody else in the mainstream." Think about that line. Yes, so that's a good line. She wrote a song about the 90s because obviously she's one of those quintessential 90s musicians. She's like, so alternative, just like everybody else in the mainstream. That's that movement, Gen X. But it's okay to care, and it's okay to show up, and it's okay to like people and love things and have hope. That's probably, like I said, the edgiest thing that you can do is have hope right now. And try. God forbid anyone would see that you care and try and love. I mean, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? Anyway, I'm going to go. I love you. Bye.
Bluetooth mode.